Today is Rosh Chodesh Av, the first day of the month of Av. There's a quote in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Talmud, Mishanichnas Av mima'atin b'simcha. When Av enters, we decrease in joy, in matters of joy. It's a sad month for the Jewish people. Tragic things happened, including the ultimate tragedy was the destruction of the two temples 2,000 years ago, which were waiting to be rebuilt, the third one, and the eternal one. And so things happen, and we have all kinds of mourning rituals and customs, M-O-U-R, that kind of mourning that happened throughout the month, for the 3 weeks beforehand, and now in these 9 days. So today begins the 9 days until Tisha B'Av, which is the date on which we all fast and mourn again. Mishanichnas Av mima'atin b'simcha. When the month of Av enters, we decrease in joy. There is a Hasidic interpretation of those same words with different punctuation, and it's Mishanichnas Av. When Av enters, mima'atin, we mitigate, we decrease the effects of Av, of the month of Av, the effects of the morning, b'simcha, through rejoicing. So it's exactly the same words, but punctuated differently. It has a completely transformed meaning that we're supposed to increase in joy to minimize the effect of the morning, of the destruction. That's the Hasidic way. Today we're talking about Parshat Devarim. It's the 5th book, and we're the first portion of the 5th book of Moses, of the 5 books of Moses. Devarim in English is Deuteronomy, and it is known to be Moshe's review of his whole life with the Jewish people, and the whole book spans the final 36 days of Moshe's life, where he goes ahead and reviews the history of the Jewish people ever since he was with them until now. So at the start, also, the whole book of Devarim is somewhat of a rebuke, that Moshe is rebuking the Jewish people in all the different stops. There were 42 stops, 42 encampments, journeys that they made, and he notes, he addresses all the different negative experiences, all the kvetching and the complaints and the wrongdoings of the Jewish people very lightly, as if we can say it, by mentioning the names of the places where they happened. So there's one lesson right there. Sometimes instead of going outright and telling somebody a rebuke straight to their face, we could hint to it and let them understand it slowly but surely. The Rebbe talks about this, and we're going to go back to the first verses in Devarim, the first psukim. It says, Eila ha-Devarim. Eila means these. Ha-Devarim are the words. Devarim also means things. These are the things, these are the words. Sure, Dibur Moshe, that Moshe spoke to the Jewish people. The word Eila, Aleph, Lamed, Hey. The numerical value, Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, Hey is 5. That's 36. So these 36 days of Moshe's speech, talking to the Jewish people, of his rebuke to the Jewish people. And then it says, very soon after, Acharei hakoto et Sichon v'et Og, after Moshe smote the kings of Sichon and Og, who were giants and a very, very powerful military governments and kingdoms. So all the biblical commentaries talk about this and ask, why is it important for Moshe to tell the Jewish people, to talk to them in this final rebuke of the last 36 days, right after he smote these big giants and these big armies and these kingdoms for them? And also, why is it important for the Torah to tell us that when did Moshe rebuke the Jewish people? Only after he smote these big kingdoms for the Jewish people. So here the Rebbe takes us for an eye-opening journey and says that when a person, we have in our modes of communication with others, we have yamin and small. We have the right hand and the left hand, the right side and the left hand. And it has to be yamin mekarevet and small docha. And in that order, it has to be that the right hand brings one close, draws near, and the left hand pushes away. And it has to be the right hand that draws near and first, and the left hand that pushes away and second. And he explains, first of all, in a regular, most commonly, the right hand is, let's call it, the right hand is stronger than the left hand. So you draw near with your stronger power and push away when needed, when necessary, with your weaker power, with your weaker arm. So that's number one. Number two is the order of things. In the order of things, it has to be first yamin mikarav. First, you have to draw near somebody, and then, if you need to rebuke them, small docha with your left weaker arm. And only after you draw them near, you can go ahead and put some rebuke in or distance in the relationship, and it won't affect the relationship. And the Rebbe talks about this in many ways. He says that somebody came to the previous Rebbe and then to him, to our Rebbe, and asked. He was a zealot. It was not somebody from the Chabad Hasidic community. It was somebody from a different community who obviously whose ideology was not aligned with the Chabad ideology. And he said to the Rebbe, asked the Rebbe, said, you know, in the Code of Jewish Law, in the Shulchan Aruch, it talks about different people and different levels of their integrity and observance, and how we're meant to treat them or react to a situation in which they find themselves. For example, it talks about if somebody fell into a pit or into a lake or whatever it is, and they're in trouble. When is our responsibility to save them or not? So generally speaking, you say, of course, anybody who's in trouble, you save them. But the Talmud, and the Code of Jewish Law actually, goes into detail and says, but if there's somebody who is a moser, who's someone whose integrity is not that great, who's an informer and gets the Jewish people into real trouble and causes, God forbid, like a capital punishment for the Jewish people, or somebody who is a mesis umediyah, somebody who influences, an influencer who's negative, who tries to influence people to serve idols, to worship idols, then the rules change, shockingly. And if somebody's in a pit like that, and you have the ability to save them, you don't have to save them. That's the Jewish law. So it's called ma'alin or moridin, whether you elevate them from the pit, or moridin, or you let them down, or you don't let them up, etc., etc. So somebody came to the Rebbe and said, you know, a lot of the people who you are being nice to and servicing are people whom the Code of Jewish Law would say, leave them in the pit and let them rot. And said the Rebbe. The Rebbe's response to this was, we were hardly in. You know that there's 4 parts to the Code of Jewish Law. There's Dalet Chelke or Arba Chelke Shulchan Aruch. There's the Orach Chaim, which is a part that deals with the laws of prayer, of synagogues, and Shabbat, and holidays. There's the Yoredea, which is the part that deals with the laws of kashrut and conversion and others, mourning. There's the Even HaEzer, which deals with the laws of marriage, and the Choshen Mishpat, which deals with the civil laws and the financial responsibility, and also the rules of the Court of Jewish Law, how they interact with people. This law of leaving somebody in a pit to rot because they were such a negative influencer is of the final laws in the 4th portion, in the 4th book of the Jewish law, of Shulchan Aruch. So what about the previous 1700 laws? Are you familiar with them? Are you following them? Are you fluent in them? And so the Rebbe said, the Rebbe said the Jewish way to read is right to left. If you take these books, put them on top, pile them up in a pile, then your law that you're presenting now is at the bottom of the barrel. So if you, said the Rebbe, will have learned all of the Jewish laws, there's 1700, I guess, other laws prior to this one, and you observe them completely, and you're completely righteous in them, then if you ask this question, there's a chance it may be justified to address it. But if not, then the question is on your motivation. What motivates you to ask this question or to make this comparison? So of course, the Rebbe blew it away and said that our job is to elevate people and to take care of them no matter where they're standing in their observance. And the Rebbe said, the previous Rebbe was very careful about that, and he led the way, and he guided us. We are meant to emulate his ways in being kind and nice to everyone. And now this kindness and niceness doesn't just mean to bring somebody back to Judaism, which is very, very special and important, but he said, Yamin Mikareves, if you want to help change somebody, first be kind to them with your right hand. First, embrace them with your right hand. Yamin Mikareves, bring them close. Draw them near with your stronger arm. And small ducha. Then, afterwards, if you think you want to rebuke somebody or help them grow in a different way, then you might have a better chance of helping them grow if you first encourage them and embrace them. The Rebbe also brought the Rambam, Maimonides, who talks about in educating children, and parenthetically also adults. He said there's this concept of mitoch shelo lishma, balishma. A person should train children to study Torah and to observe the mitzvot, even if it's not for the main purpose, because God said so, just to serve God. A person should provide incentives, the Rambam says, to children, whether it's money or honor or praise or candy. And the Rebbe says even things that are of no value to adults, little value to adults, or even negative value to adults, like sugar, candy, things like that, which we know are not good for us. Says the Rebbe, the Rambam says, give them to kids, train them in mitoch shelo lishma when they start out without the true, and not with an ulterior motive, then ba lishma, they will end up doing things only for God's sake, only because God said so. And this is what the Rebbe connected to this idea. First, Yamin Mikareves. First, give them something, embrace them, encourage them, give people the kindness, and then small duchi, then you can be a little bit harsher and rebuke or guide more effectively. I remember, also parenthetically, a long time ago I read this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and he said something similar about relationships that you have, that it's like a bank account. You can only withdraw what you deposit. So first deposit, then withdraw. I think that is pretty much the same idea. So moving on, the Rebbe ended this talk with another example of a Talmudic scholar. His name was Rabbah, who was known to be very strict and very serious, and he taught in a very serious manner. And Rabbah, before every class of his, he would get up there and crack the class up. And his students were great rabbis, but he would say something humorous to make them laugh and to lighten the mood. So the Rebbe said, this is also an example of Yamin Mikra, as first the right hand, employ the right hand, the powers of the right hand, which is kindness and love and empathy, and then you can be more beneficial when they need to be serious and they need to be more focused. So that's that. And finally, just to end off, the Rebbe asked the question, going back to the beginning of our talk here about Moshe Rabbeinu. In this week's Parsha, as we noted earlier, he started off saying, okay, I was the one who battled and succeeded to win. I was victorious over the kingdoms of Sichon and Og, the two mightiest nations, and I gave you their land. And you are now, this is before they crossed the Jordan River, so on that side, but he gave them the land, and there it belonged to the Jewish people. And only then did he go and rebuke them, also lightly. So the Rebbe asks this question, why is it that he needed to do that, or he needed to mention it, if every day they lived with miracles, like the manna came from the heaven every single day? So they saw that Moshe was depositing constantly. Why did he need to employ such a great feat of military victory in order to rebuke them further? So the Rebbe said that because now Moshe was going to mention and talk about a very serious crime that the Jews committed, which is the golden calf, which was idol worship, etc., and the bad timing and all that. So the golden calf was such a serious defect of the Jewish people. Moshe said, in order to mention the golden calf, I need to have a bigger deposit. I need to, in order to rebuke them, such a harsh manner, or have such a harsh experience that they, or actions that they've taken, I need to deposit a stronger deposit, a big deposit. And that was this big military victory of the two greatest, most powerful nations in the region, Sichon and Og. Anyway, I think this is a basic idea, and we have that to live with. Some ideas, I think we're good. Some points to ponder and bring into our lives. God bless you. Thanks for coming and share.